The results are in after a busy election day and a contentious campaign season. We'll spend today's broadcast looking at the impact of your decisions and how both our states move forward with new amendments and elected officials you voted into office. We begin in Missouri, where we're watching some of the biggest results, starting with the race for governor. Voters picked Republican Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe over Democrat and House Minority Leader Crystal Quade.
Well, listen, I'm incredibly humbled to be before you. This has been a great journey, and I'm proud to be here and accept your confidence in the job that we think we can do.
The race was called shortly after the polls closed. Kehoe thanked his supporters in Jeff City Tuesday, pledging to combat crime, work to right the economy, and in his words, fight to respect and protect innocent life. We'll get to that in a moment. Republican and St. Louis area attorney David Wassinger will be the next lieutenant governor. Republicans really didn't have to battle any surprises in statewide races. Current Attorney General Andrew Bailey wins his first election, beating Democratic challenger Elad Gross. And Republican Senator Josh Hawley wins another 6 years on Capitol Hill. He handily beat Democrat Lucas Kunce and told supporters and reporters alike he has plans for his second term.
We got to close our border, number one. We've got to stop the flow of drugs into the state of Missouri. We've got to bring jobs back to the state, and we've got to get wages up. So there's a lot of work to do.
Jackson County, Missouri voters made history Tuesday, electing Melissa Johnson as county prosecutor. She'll be the first black woman to ever hold the post and says she's ready to go on day one and understands the importance of representation in the county.
If you have never felt yourself seen in a justice system intended to serve you, I am honored to be your beacon of hope. And it is a responsibility that I do not take lightly.
Johnson pledged to use accountability to curb crime and boost safety while not losing sight of the county's humanity. She has long promoted a balanced approach to crime in our community. In Kansas, we've been watching a couple of U.S. House races very closely. Congresswoman Sharice Davids won a fourth term in office, beating back Republican challenger Dr. Prasath Reddy. And in the Kansas second, former Kansas Attorney General and Republican Derek Schmidt will head to Capitol Hill, beating out former Congresswoman Democrat Nancy Boyda. After the dust settled, we learned the balance of power in the Kansas legislature and the Missouri General Assembly is relatively the same. Though you'll see some new faces, Republicans still hold a supermajority in both chambers in both states. Let's jump into the results with our roundtable of journalists. Please welcome back KMBC9 political reporter Michael Mahoney and Jason Hancock, editor-in-chief of the Missouri Independent. We have a lot to get to, gentlemen. Let's start with the races that you've been watching, that we've been watching. Jason, any big surprises in Missouri for you?
I think there was some surprise that the Democrats didn't do better in the legislative races. You know, there was some thoughts that with abortion on the ballot and some of these suburban districts that Biden had won in 2020, that Democrats might pick up 2 or 3 seats in the House, maybe take down that supermajority, maybe pick up a couple seats in the Senate. As it turns out, as you mentioned before, they kind of swapped seats in the Senate. They lost a seat to in the KC suburbs, and they picked up one in mid-Missouri. In the House, there was same difference. There was a loss in a Republican seat that was flipped and a Democrat seat that was flipped. And so everything basically stayed the same after spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on both sides. We come back in January with the same legislative makeup as we left in May. So new faces, but certainly not new political dynamics.
Yeah, when we talked to Crystal Quade running for governor before the election, she was hoping that there would be this progressive groundswell that would help down ballot races. Didn't really happen.
Yeah, no, one of the things I've noted is that in politics, there sometimes are coattails where one candidate or one issue will help another down the ballot. Well, coattails go down, they don't go up. And that's what happened in Crystal Quade's Democratic race for governor in the state of Missouri. Missouri passed Amendment 3, which codifies abortion and reproductive rights in the state. She was hoping that would help her. It did not help her at all. And I mean, that was one of the takeaways. And the other thing, as Jason alluded to as well, the Democrats really thought that they had a couple of shots at least breaking the supermajority, which means that they'd still be in the minority, but they'd have a little more power when it comes to governor's vetoes and such. And that didn't happen. So that's a big disappointment for the Democrats there. In Kansas, the Republican supermajority actually expanded a couple of seats there, and some targeted races by the Democrats and Governor Kelly didn't turn out the way they wanted.
Jason, I want to mention the Secretary of State's race in Missouri. The incoming secretary now, Republican Denny Hoskins, said that he wants to hand count ballots for all elections moving forward. Your team has reported on the implications of that switch. Tell us what you found.
Well, one of the things you have to remember is that there's very little that Secretary of State's office can do to require widespread hand counting of votes without legislative action. So he's talked about going to the legislature, trying to get more funding, trying to get some statutes changed in order to require a higher percentage of votes to be hand counted. I think he'd prefer if it was universal hand counting. There were some clerks that were worried that Secretary of State Hoskins might try to use the Secretary of State's office's authority to certify election machines to force this issue, to not certify the machines in order to force the county clerks to use a hand count. He said that's not even on his radar. That's not something he's interested in doing. But, the clerks and local election officials are sounding the alarm about that proposal because they say it's less accurate, it's more time consuming, it's way more expensive. And in some places, this is something that I hadn't thought about. When you talk to the clerks that run these elections, they think about this stuff closely. There aren't a lot of Republicans that live in, Columbia. So getting a Republican poll watchers when you're trying to do these hand counting of votes, getting the partisan shift of Democrats in Cape Girardeau, trying to get people into these places that you need in order to run the elections, it's really hard, and making it more comprehensive and requiring more hands-on manpower is just the clerks and local election officials think it's a terrible idea. But it's something that Hoskins run on. It's something he's been passionate about. And it's obviously something he's going to pursue when lawmakers return in January.